Okay, welcome back, kiddos. Now we're moving on to Unit 11. We're going to talk about arc length and the area of sectors. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this stuff before, so let's get right into it. Okay, so first off, let's talk about an arc, right? We know an arc is like the crust of pizza, right? So if we see right over here, this would be arc AB, right? Okay, so the arc length is a portion of the, if we see all the way around, that's called the circumference, a portion of the circumference of a circle. Okay, so that's what we're going to determine today is how much out of this whole thing is that arc. Okay, and so we're going to use the circumference formula. So you may have remember using this formula right over here. It's 2 pi r, right, where r is equal to the radius. Okay, so r is the radius. So what we're going to see is that we can use the measure of the arc in degrees, which we practiced in the past, to find its length. Okay, so we're going to just use our knowledge of the arc measure. And so this is the formula. The arc measure over 360 degrees, okay, is equal to the proportion of the arc length over that circumference formula. Okay, so instead of that circumference formula, remember we're going to say we're going to use 2 pi r. Okay, so we're just going to use this, whatever proportion of that measure is going to be equal to the same proportion as the length. So let's get into the practice of it now, and then as we do it, I'm sure it'll make more sense to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this first problem right over here. Okay, it says in circle F, right, so this is F, that tells us this circle, with measurement of angle EFG is 36. Okay, so EFG, let's trace that out from E to F to G. Okay, that is 36 degrees. Okay, and it says EF, okay, that's a length, is 11 units. Okay, so from E to F, right over here, right, that much is 11. Okay, they want us to find the length of EG, and they said arc EG, so we're talking about this, right? We're talking about this right here is what we're trying to find. So that's X. All right. And the main thing is they want us to go round to the nearest hundred. So that means our answer is a decimal with 2 places, right? And so we got to keep that in mind as far as how our answer goes. So let's just set it up just like this. We're going to say the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set it up. Okay. So let's set that up. So we know we're going to have an equal sign, a parenthesis, and 2 proportions, right? So right over here, this is always going to be 360. Okay. Now, the arc measure. Let's look at what we have. This is the angle measure, right? They don't tell us the arc measure in degrees. So we need to put in degrees. Okay, so that's in degrees. Arc measure in degrees. Well, what do we know? We know that the central angle is equal to the arc created, right? So if this vertex is right there, if that's 36 degrees, that means this is also 36 degrees. So that's what we have to keep in mind, okay? So that's what we need to remember is that this right over here, okay? So when we set that up, all right? So now we got the left side. Now equals, on the right side, we said the arc length. Okay, the arc length is what we're trying to find, right? So we got to focus on this. We got this. We're going to put X there, right? And then over the circumference formula, which we said is 2 pi r. Okay, now, one thing we want to know, this EF, that is the radius, right? Because it goes from the center to there, right? So this is our radius right over here. Okay, so we're going to remember that when we're putting it right over here. So we said this formula is 2 pi r. So we're going to put 2, then pi. Then we're going to put that radius, right? So we said instead of r, we're going to put 11, right? And I can just put it just like that, 2 pi 11. Okay, so that's it. Now that we set it up, the second step is we're just going to cross multiply. So if we do that, if we go from right over here, let's do step number 2. So 360 times x is going to give us 360x equals, okay, so now this is 36 times 2 times pi times 11. So let's just do that. 36 times 2 pi 11. Okay, now check this out. Just work with me through this step. The next step is we're going to divide, right? So I'm going to divide that side by 360. I'm going to divide that side by 360, right? All right, so that cancels out. And so then we have, that just leaves us with x equals, and I'm just going to type this whole thing into the calculator just like that. Okay, so if I do that, that will give me a decimal answer. Okay, so if I do that, if I put this whole thing in the calculator, that's going to give me the answer of approximately 6.9115, right? And so they said that hundredth means decimal placed at 2 spots. So we're going to underline that 1 right over there, right? Going to go look to the right. That's going to tell us to keep it, right? So it's going to be still 6.91. Okay, and that's going to be our answer. Okay, so that's the basics of it right there. All right, so I know it's a little tricky because we haven't worked much with that, but that's all we got to do is follow our formula. All right, let's keep it going. All right, this one right here. Okay, it says encircle T, right? So we know that circle T. TU is 3. Okay, so TU, that goes from T to U. Okay, that's equal to 3. That means that's our radius, right? Okay, and then it says angle UTV is 80. So that means from UT to V is 80. Okay, find the length of UV. So they want us to find this. So let's put X there. All right, so on this one, though, let's check this out. They want the answer as a fraction times pi. Okay, so this is a little bit different. So no rounding. Decimal. So we're not going to have a rounding decimal answer, okay? So let's set it up, right? So we're going to say the same thing. We're going to have the arc measure, right? So if you know if that's 80, we know the arc measure is also 80, right? Over, we said it's always going to be 360, right? So 360 equals the arc length. Okay, we're trying to find the arc length, right? So we're going to put that as x. And then over here is 2 times pi times r. So we're going to say 2 times pi. And then we said the radius was this 3, right? So that's why we're going to put the 3 there. Okay, so now that's our first step. Now this one we're going to do a little bit differently, right? So the second step we're going to cross multiply, right? Still the same thing. All right, so now let's check this out. 360 times x is 360x, right? Equals, now we want to keep pi in the answer. So we want to keep pi in the answer. So we need to keep pi in the answer. Okay, so that's what we got to keep that in mind. So keeping that in mind, let's just go and bring all this down. 80 times 2 times pi times 3. This can be 80 times 2 times pi times 3. Okay, next step, we're going to divide. So I'm going to divide that side by 360. I'm going to divide this side by 360. That cancels out. That leaves me with x equals. I'm going to put everything except for the pi in the calculator. So let's try to do this like this. Okay, I'm going to put everything except for the pi, and then I'm going to bring down that pi right over there. Okay, so I'm just putting in everything except for the pi. Put everything except pi in the calculator. Okay, so if I put that in my calculator, 80 times 2 times 3 over 360. So basically it'd be like this. 80 times 2 times 360. I'm sorry. 80 times 2 times 3, right, over 360. Okay, so if I put that in my calculator, that would give me the answer of 4 over 3. Then I would bring down my pi. Okay, so that would be my final answer is 4/3 pi. So the tricky thing is to type that into the calculator. Once you do that, then you'll see how we got to that answer. Okay, so that's the difference between these two. So I hope you're listening to me. On this one, it tells us 100, so that means we need to get to a decimal. This one tells us using pi, so that means we need to put everything else except for the pi in the calculator. Okay, so keep that in mind if you get stuck or when we go over that again. All right, so now let's keep it moving. All right, let's look over here. I know it seems tricky, but you got this. All right, in this circle, measurement of BAC is 20. Okay, so BAC, that's 20 degrees, right? The length of BC, this arc, now we say this arc is 13 ninths pi. Okay, find the length of AB. Okay, so AB, this is going to be X. That's our radius, right? That's our radius. That's what we need to keep in mind. Okay, so we just have to substitute it in. So first step, we're just going to set it up, right? We said the first thing we put over here is the arc measure, right? Well, if this is 20 degrees, right, that arc measure, I know the length is this, right? But the measure of it is going to be the same thing as that, the degree measure. I know it's a little tricky, but you got this, right? Over, we said it's always going to be 360, right? Okay, next, the arc length. It says find this is the arc length, right? The length of the arc is that. So we're going to put that right over there. I know that looks weird, but we're going to say 13 ninths pi, right? Right on top. Okay, then underneath, we said it's going to be 2 times pi times r. Okay, so 2 times pi. Let's ask ourselves, do we know what the r is? Okay, r is this x right here, right? We don't know what that is yet, right? So we're going to put that right there. Or we can leave it as r, either way, right? It doesn't matter. How about we leave it as r? Okay, so now, second step, we're going to cross multiply, right? So first thing we're going to do is we recognize we want to keep that r because we need to find the length of AB, right? Okay, so I know this is a little tricky, but check this out. The first thing, we would normally do our cross multiplication, right? We said this times this over this times this. But whenever we're doing math, we want to remember anything that's on the same, that's on the top and the bottom can just cancel out, right? So let's just go and cancel that out. If we do that, then that'll make our calculations easier. So now, instead of doing 360 times that 13 ninths pi, I'm just doing 360 times 13 over 9. Okay, so if I wrote that out, that'd be 360 times 13 over 9, right? Equals 20 times 2, and we don't know what r is, right? So 20 times 2r, right? Okay, so just keep it with me. I know this looks weird, but now if we put that into our calculator, right, that left side can go right into our calculator, right? So if I put that into my calculator, that's going to give me the answer of 520. Okay, so that's going to be 520 equals, right? So now 20 times 2r, right? 20 times 2r gives me 40r, right? So last step, I'm going to divide both sides by 40, right? I'm going to divide that by 40. So now let me switch that r over here to the left side, right? So that'll give me r right over there, right? So now if I put that into my calculator, that's going to give me the answer of 13. And so we're just trying to figure out what we're trying to solve for, and then that will give us the answer right over there, right? Okay, so next, so that's why on this one, we remember that we're trying to find that answer with pi, so we're recognizing that we're going to use pi. Okay, on this one, they told us the answer is in pi, so we're going to keep pi out of it as we're doing that. This one, they said to the hundredth, so that means we're going to type everything in, including the pi, where there's a pi button. All right, so now let's get into our last one. Example for today. All right, so on this one it says in this circle P, right? PQ equals 2. PQ, right? So PQ, P to Q, that's going to be equal to 2, right? Now we know that is our radius, right? That's our radius. The length of QR is 7 ninths pi. So from Q to R is 7 over ninths pi, right? Now, here's what they want. They want us to find the measurement of QPR, right? So QPR, they want us to find that out, right? So that is the central angle, right? Here's what we need to remember. That's the central angle, which is also equal to the arc measure. in degrees, right? So that's what we need to keep in mind. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and set this up. Okay, so first thing we need to do, right? We know we need to set it up. So we're going to say a fraction equals a fraction. So it says the arc measure in degrees. Well, that angle is what we're trying to find, right? So that's also the arc measure in degrees, right? So that's going to be x. That's what we're trying to find, right? So if we're trying to find that's x over, we said it's always going to be 360. Next, we have the arc length. It tells us the length of the arc is 7/9 pi, right? So we're going to say 7/9 pi right on top. I know it looks weird, but we got this. Right, over the circumference form is 2 pi r. So let's write down the 2 pi. Let's ask ourselves, do we know the radius? The radius right here is 2, right? So we're going to put, instead of that radius, we're going to put that 2 right there. Okay, next we have to solve, right? So what we're going to remember is we're going to cancel the pi. Right, so if we look right over here, these two, the pi right over here, we can cancel that out. So if we do that real quick, we cancel that out. Now we're going to cross multiply. Okay, so now if I do that, let's go ahead and do the math on that. Okay, so if I say 360 times 7/9, right? So that would be 360 times 7/9 equals that's going to be x times 2 times 2, right? So that'd be x times 2 times 2, right? So that's okay. You might already know what that is, but that's okay. We're just going to go across just like that. All right, so now, okay, so we see this on the left side. This can go right into our calculator just like that, right? So if we type that into our calculator, that's going to give us 280 equals, now let's look over this, x times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times x is 4x, right? Now that looks a lot easier, right? We're just going to divide that side by 4, divide that side by 4. If we cancel that out, I can bring the x over here. X equals 280 divided by 4 gives you 70. Okay, so I know this is tricky. This is the toughest mind work that we've been doing, but all we got to do is just think about where everything goes. So we got 4 examples here. We're not going to do the other side today. We'll do that next time. So on this one, we have a decimal. We know we're going to type the whole thing into our calculator, right? And then we're going to round. Okay, on this one, when we say that the answer has a fraction times pi, we're going to leave pi out of it until the end and then put the pi at the end. Okay, I'm going to bring that down. So don't forget that. That itself is 4/3, but I got to bring that pi down. Don't forget that. Okay, then on this one, when they say find the length, we're just going to do our math. We're going to remember that we cross it out whenever we can, right over there, and then we just solve, and then right over here, same thing. We're just going to set it up. We're going to remember the central angle equals the arc measure, set it up, cross multiply, and then solve. Okay, I know you have this. If you have any questions, just let me know, and we'll go from there.